If you always forget everything you study at every point in time, this video is the perfect video for you, because this video contains everything you need to know to actually remember anything you study. It includes how to get started with whatever you are studying. It includes how to encode whatever you are studying, and it includes how to retain and retrieve whatever you are studying. The knowledge in this video is something that you should not miss, because it contains everything you need. So sit back and enjoy this video. If you are new on this channel, I am Abayomi, and on this channel I drop in tips and strategies that can help you as a student learn better and improve in your academics. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, please subscribe to my channel right now. I'll be explaining a learning framework that I actually developed myself, and it will actually help you remember more and study in less time. So this framework is something that I've tested multiple times, and it has worked for me a lot. I'll be breaking down the framework for you in this video. I'll be explaining to you what embeds each of the elements in the framework. So the first framework is concentration. Then which goes down to association, then which goes down to repetition, then which goes up to testing, and then it goes back to concentration. So this is a cyclic learning framework that you can apply anytime you want to learn. And this framework goes like that. It starts from concentration when you initially want to learn something, then it goes down to association, then it goes down to repetition and testing. And these two framework has to do with the encoding of the information, and these two constitutes the retention. So you need every element in this learning framework in order for you to be able to learn something and be able to remember more in a very short time. If you only concentrate without associating, there is no how you'll be able to learn effectively, and there's no how you'll be able to remember. If you only concentrate, associate, and you fail to repeat what you learn, then there is no how you'll be able to sustain anything. And if you do these three alone without doing this testing, in fact, there's no how you'll be able to get feedback from whatever you learn, and you'll be able to know whether you've actually learned that thing correctly. So all these things are very important when you want to learn, and I'll be breaking it down for you step by step in this video. So pay attention as I go on. If you are struggling to remember anything you study, if you are struggling to stay focused on anything you study at any point in time, or if you are struggling to stay consistent on anything you study and you struggle to get the grades you desire, I have created a packaged PDF for you that can help you study effectively. Also, I'm offering a personalized one-on-one coaching session that will help you take your study to the next level, and will help you create a study plan that is tailored just for you. Thoughts are limited, and don't wait. Click the link in my description now to message me, and I'll send you the free PDF. Very first element in the framework is concentration. Anytime you want to learn something, you need to concentrate on anything you want to learn. Without concentrating on anything you want to learn, whatever you want to learn will not be solidified in your brain. In fact, it will not get in at all. Concentration is very important, because it is when you concentrate that the neurons in your brain tend to establish connections, and you'll be able to learn very well. Now, take for example, we have this neuron, and we have this neuron. Let's call this neuron A and neuron B. This neuron forms when you learn something. It actually responds when your sensory organs perceive something, which includes your eye, your ear. Anytime all these sensory organs perceive something in the environment, then we are learning, and connection happens in the brain, which between these connections it happens. And if, for example, you are reading and you are not paying attention to whatever you are reading at that point in time, you'll be making a very wrong connection whenever you are learning, because you are not paying attention to what you are learning. You are thinking about something, and it will interrupt with the correct connection that's supposed to be established when you are meant to learn something that you are learning. Take, for example, you are learning mathematics and you are trying to learn a particular concept in mathematics, which is quadratic equations. Now, while you are learning quadratic equations, if you do not pay attention while you are learning quadratic equation, you are thinking about something else, the wrong connection will be established because you did not pay attention. And in fact, you have to still go back and learn the quadratic equation because you didn't make the right connection on quadratic equation. You were distracted and the wrong connection was made on something that you were distracted in. So that is why it is very important for you to make good connections by paying attention to whatever you learn. And that is when the connection becomes solidified. If you do not pay the right connection and your sensory organ do not pay attention to whatever you are learning at that point in time, there is no how you'll be able to learn anything. So anytime you are trying to learn anything initially, try to pay attention to whatever you are learning and remove every distraction. It could be internal distraction, it could be external distraction. Try to remove all these distractions when you are learning. This can actually contribute to the effectiveness of how you can establish connections in your brain and how well you'll be able to pay attention to whatever you are trying to learn. It's very important. Without doing this concentration, there is no how every other element in the framework will be able to work. So you have to pay attention first. You have to concentrate on what you are learning before every other thing in the framework works. Now, how exactly can you concentrate on anything you want to learn in order for you to be able to establish strong connections in your brain? Now, the first thing is to take notes, actively take notes. I tried this when I was in school and it really helped me a lot. When you take notes on whatever you are learning, it screens out every distraction that can be going on and make you pay attention to whatever you are learning at that point. Because as you are writing, you are thinking about what you are learning and at the same time you are paying attention. So taking notes while you are learning is very important while you are learning, because when you are reading or studying, because it can actually help you to pay attention and it will help you establish strong connections whenever you are learning. And also try as much as possible to look for a very good spot that you'll be able to learn. Find a nice spot that is free from every distraction, because it is when you have a nice spot, it will help you easily study, and in fact you'll be able to pay attention to whatever you're learning and minimize distraction. It is very important because it helps you pay attention to whatever you're learning and it helps you encode the information correctly. So if you don't pay attention, there's no how you'll be able to encode the information correctly. So it is very important for you to concentrate on whatever you are learning. So now let's go to the next aspect of the framework, which is association. Association, whenever you are learning, is a very important part of learning, and you need to pay attention to this aspect. You've concentrated and you've actually set the stage of a good study, and you'll be able to establish good connection where you are learning. So now association is a very important aspect in the encoding stage, which is part of the learning framework. If you don't associate enough, there is no how you'll be able to remember, there's no how you'll be able to understand it. And when it comes to associating in neuroscience, we have neuron A, we have neuron A, and we have neuron B. Now, take for example, you are trying to learn concepts in calculus. Calculus is an advanced topic. Now, algebra, when it comes to expanding, collecting the like terms, and doing some algebraic expressions, you need that information to be able to learn calculus effectively. So whenever you are learning calculus, it's very important for you to be able to associate what you've learned in the previous time to link to what you are learning now to be able to get anything you want to get in your brain. When you cannot make the right connection, you'll be learning in isolation, and in fact you'll not be able to understand, and in fact you'll not be able to remember, because there is no clue in your brain that will make you establish any connection. And that is why it is very important for students not to memorize, because when you memorize, you are only paying attention on the words, you are not establishing the right connections, and in fact it will be very difficult for you to remember and understand anything you want to learn. It's very important for you to establish the good connection. And when you are establishing and associating connection, there is one thing I want you to understand. Imagine this connection represents what you've learned in algebra, which includes collecting the lifetimes and all that. And you're trying to establish a new connection in calculus here. Now, you're trying to do a particular operation in calculus, but then if you do not establish the right connection in your algebra, it's very difficult for you to learn calculus. And where problem comes in, because this will tap in from here and you'll be able to learn correctly. So if you've not learned algebra correctly, there is no how you'll be able to learn calculus correctly. And that is why it is very important for you to take cognizance of foundational knowledge. If you've learned the foundational knowledge and you've locked that in your long-term memory, it's very easy for you to access your long-term memory, and that is how you can actually learn in a very short time. Because if you've established the former connections before correctly, it's very, very easy for you to tap into those former connections to be able to learn something in the present time. When you do not have the solid foundation in the formal time, there is no how you can establish the good connection to be able to learn something in the advanced stage or in a later time. And that is why association is very important. So on this video, I'll be sharing with you the exact ways you can establish good connections whenever you are trying to learn and be able to encode anything you want to learn at any particular point in time. Perfect way you can associate anything you want to learn, aside from locking into whatever you've learned in the past and bringing it up to something you are learning in the future, is that you should apply it to real life example. Now, this can actually help you a lot, and it can save a lot of time anytime you are trying to learn, because you don't need to stay long on studying and go long without actually getting anything you want to learn. So whenever you are trying to learn, ask yourself, how is what I'm learning can be related to what I've experienced before? Now, take for example, you are trying to learn something in economics. Now, you're trying to learn something that has to do with demand and supply in economics. Now, if you are trying to learn that particular topic abstractly by just reading the theoretical knowledge, you find it very difficult to understand. But if you are trying to associate it to something that you've actually experienced in the past, that is, you going to the market and you making demand for a particular thing in the market and you paying for that thing that you got, that is a perfect example. So always trying to look for ways you can actually apply real life examples to whatever you're trying to learn in the present time. Try to link concepts, and this is where transfer of information comes in. You can transfer knowledge. Now, if you want to transfer knowledge, take for example, you've learned a particular concept in statistics. Now, and you're trying to learn something like that in economics that relates to something in statistics. Take, for example, you are trying to learn regression model. You're trying to learn regression in statistics. Now, and you're trying to learn something like that in economics that relates to statistics, which relates to regression model. It is very important for you to be able to transfer the knowledge that you've gotten in statistics to economics. That you've got to statistics to economics whenever you are trying to learn the same topic. You can also associate by creating analogies. You can cite an analogy when you are trying to learn something. Now, you are learning something in mathematics, which is simultaneous equation. And you know, simultaneous equation is something working together at the same time. You can try to think about what is that particular thing in the real life that actually works at the same time that you can use in understanding the concept of simultaneous in mathematics. If you can do that perfectly, then you'll be able to associate informations perfectly and you'll be able to remember at any point in time. Now, aside from associating and doing all those things, in the secondary stage, which is association, there is another thing that you need to pay attention to. Now, when you are trying to learn something, there's what we call cognitive overload. And cognitive overload happens when you are exposed to so many information at a very short period of time, which can overload your short-term memory. So anytime you are trying to learn something, try to associate whatever you are learning now to what you stored in your long-time memory, for it to be very easy for you to assimilate. And in fact, it saves you the time from reading long things because you've associated it to something that you've learned in the past. I will show you how you can do that perfectly by using the technique chunking. Now, when you're trying to chunk something, I want to give you a perfect example in economics, and it can help you associate better. Now, you're trying to learn the types of market structure, and in types of market structure, we have now there's a perfect way you can do this that can help you learn everything. If, for example, you want to chunk this thing into, you want to compress it into something that is familiar and you'll be able to remember and later on. Now, you can use this as, you can also represent this as PMOM, which is perfect men order more. So whenever you remember perfect men order more, you can link it to these types of market structure in economics, and it will help you to remember very, very fast. And that is exactly how you can associate. You use the first letter in each word of this to represent this sentence. And whenever you think about this, it's very easy for you to think about this. You'll be able to remember the types of market structure. That is the perfect way you can associate. Now that you've concentrated and you've associated perfectly, which has to do with the encoding stage, this move on to the retaining stage. And in the retaining stage, that is when repetition is very important. Now, after you might have concentrated and you might have associated, and initially when you are learning, it's very important for you to repeat whatever you are learning in order for that connection that you formed while you are concentrating and you are associating, in order for those connections to be solidified. Because those connections are not solidified yet, you are just making that connection. So it's very important for you to be able to sustain the connection, and the only way you can sustain those connections is for you to repeat whatever you learn. And when I mean by repeat, that doesn't mean that you have to carry your book every single time, every day. No, you have to be able to schedule your study and be studying at interval. For example, you can schedule just 2 hours per day to study every single day, and you study for that 2 hours, and you keep repeating and you keep learning that thing over and over again until the day of your exam. And when you are learning, when you are doing this is why you cannot remember whatever you learned whenever you go to the exam hall, because you've not repeated the information enough for that information to be able to be solidified, in order for you to be able to recall whenever you need it in your exam. And that is why it is very important for you to start early. Once you start early and you study bit by bit till the day of your exam, you are giving your brain time to consolidate the information and for that information to be solidified in your brain. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching you exactly how to do it and the techniques to apply to actually repeat whatever you learn in order for that information to be solidified, which is part of the learning framework that I'll be discussing on the horizontal axis. We have the days, and on the vertical axis we have memory retention. So whenever you learn something initially, this is your initial learning. You learn something here, it is very, very normal for you to forget, and that is why the curve goes down like this throughout the day. Now, this is the first day. This is the initial learning. So on the next day you reviewed it, you kept it up to this place. This is your review time. That is why you've interrupted the forgetting process as it goes by. You interrupted it by studying it again at this point in time. And of course, it is normal for you to forget. So if you do not review, you will forget as the day goes by, because this is the day. If you don't review, if you don't interrupt it here, you forget. That is why you need to interrupt it here. So after the first day, you decided to review it on the third day. So you interrupted the forgetting process on the third day here to keep it up. So of course you forget as the day goes by. Then you decided to interrupt it on the sixth day. So if you do not review, that is repeat whatever you learn, it's very normal for you to forget, because you will definitely forget. So that is why, in order for you to keep up this graph and keep remembering, which is memory retention, you need to keep reviewing. So this review 1, I can name this review 1, review 2, review 3. So you keep interrupting the forgetting process. And that is where spaced repetition comes in. Now, this is spaced repetition because you've actually learned it initially, then you spaced your learning, decided to learn it on the 3rd day, which is here you interrupted the forgetting cough. Then you decided to learn it on the 6th day, you interrupted the forgetting cough. Or you can decide that you can give yourself that, okay, I'm going to be learning every 2 hours every single day, or every 2 hours every 2 days after I've learned something, in order for you to be able to interrupt the forgetting and to reduce the tendencies of you forgetting the information. And also, by the time the day goes by, you'll be able to solidify the information that you've learned, and in fact it will be able to store into the long-time memory, because when you learn something here, is in the short-time memory, and as the day goes by, as you review at interval, it goes to the long-time memory. So that is why they used to say you have to forget something first before you be able to remember. It's when you might have forgotten, that you now review them, then you'll be able to remember again. So this is spaced repetition. And another thing that you need to pay attention to while you're applying the spaced repetition is active recall. Now, it is another method you can use whenever you are trying to learn something. When you are reviewing this information at interval using the spaced repetition, it will not make sense for you to just expose yourself to the book only by just reading and reviewing the information. As much as you want to do that, you need to actually step back and try to think about what you are learning and try to recall it and actively learn it instead of just passive. And this is where active recall comes in. You need to forcefully recall the information from your brain when you are trying to review. So if you cannot recall perfectly, then you go back to the book and try to revise and try to recall again whenever you are relearning or whenever you are reviewing at interval before the day of the exam. So that is another way of repeating the information instead of just exposing yourself to the book only. Another way is just for you to try to forcefully recall whatever you've learned and try to remember. Another way you can actually solidify whatever you've learned on repeat is that you should use different learning modes. You can decide to watch videos on whatever you are learning to be able to retain the information. You can decide to listen to lectures on whatever you are learning to retain the information. You can also decide to use your hand by getting something done on whatever you are trying to learn. All these things are just meant for you to be able to retain that information by using different learning modes and by spacing up your learning and try to actively recall whatever you've learned along the way. Now, when you are doing this repetition, it is very important for you to mix your practice. You don't use block practice, that is studying one thing again and again and again and again. Now, in this your review time, this initial learning, you learned something in mathematics. Now, the following day, you can try to learn something in geography. You learn something in geography. Now, this second review, after this first review time, this second review time, this is when you learn mathematics. Then you decided to learn something in geography. Then this, on the 3rd day, you reviewed your mathematics. On the 4th day, you reviewed your geography. On the 5th day, you reviewed something else. On the 6th day, you try to review your mathematics again. So you try to mix it up as the day goes by. Instead of just reading mathematics again and again and again and again, try to mix it up with another subject, try to mix it up with another topic, because by the time you actually neglect it and go back to something else, and you try to go back to it again and try to remember, it solidifies the information. So you have to be able to use the interleaving practice, or you mix practices of going back to back on a particular subject because you want to know it or because you want to solidify the information. It is not advisable for you to read something back to back because you want to remember. Give yourself space. Try to think about what you've learned and move on to another thing and go back to it again. That is the best way you can actually give your brain time to process it and be able to remember. So another thing that you need to do in the CAT learning framework is testing. Now you've concentrated, you've associated, you've repeated what you've learned. Now it's now time for you to test. This testing is a form of feedback to know whatever you are trying to learn before has been solidified in your brain. And this is how you will know whether you should actually repeat the process again by concentrating, by associating, by repeating, and go back to testing. So when you are testing, this is when you try to go for a to try to quiz yourself. Then this is where you quiz yourself. This is where you practice questions and previous past questions. This is when you actually teach someone what you've learned to know whether you've actually understood it. Now, when you are trying to teach someone, try to explain as if you are explaining to a 5-year-old. If that person do not understand it well, or you cannot explain it simply, then you've not understood it enough. When it comes to testing yourself, this is where you understand you are trying to look at key areas and try to look for your weaknesses and try to focus on that weaknesses and try to work on them as you go on. Because after you might have tested yourself, you might have seen where the lapses are, then you go to the weaknesses, then you understand, then you try to look for, okay, what are the ways I can improve on my weaknesses and be able to get better on whatever I am learning at that particular point in time. So it is very important to go through the process again by concentrating, associating, repeating. If this is faulty, you go back to concentrating and you associate. If this is faulty, if you cannot repeat perfectly or you don't understand, go back to associating again. And if this is faulty, you go back to repeating again, or you go back to repeating if this is faulty, and or you either go back to concentrating, then you go through the cycle again. So that is that. So I hope you've got so much value from whatever I've explained in this video with the CAT learning framework. If you got so much value from this video, please smash the like button and also subscribe to the channel. You can also check out this other video on ways you can actually study lots of material in less time. So thank you so much for watching and see you on the next video.